I've just stopped here because just behind you is the site of that masonry bridge, which was one hell of a landmark. And I mean, it's a shame that the land reclamation scheme of 77, 78 was extended that far. It was a hell of a complicated structure. I mean, I did go and have a damn good look at it. I mean, I frightened somebody terribly because there was, apart from a central, by the time you got to the top, there was just a central causeway with side arms coming out for timber work, and I was sat on the edge of one of those with my legs over the edge with a tape measure. I dropped my tape over to try to get it to scrape along the road, and somebody came underneath, so I said, "Oi!" He looked up and he said, "Don't jump, don't jump." So, hold up bloody tape, that's all I need. It was interesting because there's multiple construction, multiple phasing. There was at least 4 phases in it, which is to do with the business of there being restricted areas of ground for quarry workings. There was lots of different little freeholds in the Financial, which were being leased off to survey companies, sometimes being split between 2 or 3 companies to maximise the rents for the landowner, but making a mess of trying to run the say quarry, which meant people heaped rubbish on top of the rubbish. You'll find these sort of layers as you go through. We'll see them. And this bridge, somebody rightly said, had a small arch on the railway side, which is this side here, which was an original previous structure, I think. Then there was a big arch for the road, but there was a third one as well, which had been buried in the tip. Now, an old guy told me, it's his dad that told him about it. And when they did the land reclamation, Dave Mitchell, one of the machine drivers, who I told the story to in the pub, went looking for it and nearly got there. But the site engineer came up and said, what are you doing 10 metres below you where you're supposed to be? But I found documentary evidence since. There's a lease of the quarry, it mentions the 3-arched bridge, so, you know. But I thought I'd show you that site. And, you know, we've got more remains from here onwards, so let's go up this way. And
what was this bit here?
That is a retaining wall. What you've got is, well, we've got competition for one thing. The big quarry on the far side here, the Talsan quarry, is something that has expanded laterally as well as depth-wise and swallowed up some earlier workings. And that wall there is from, if you look at the 1889 first edition map, you'll see that it's an embankment that went all the way around the edge. And this is the only remnant that's left of it. The rest has been eaten away. But it's strange how one has connections. You know, there was a chap I knew who'd done his apprenticeship as a blacksmith here just after World War I. And as a kid, he said he remembered a rockman and his partner thwacking those 2 iron bars into that wall somewhere on 1910 for the reason of attaching a rope to it to go down over the edge to clean some dangerous stuff that was hanging above the quarry. Because if you worked on the vertical face down there, your biggest danger was something landing on your head, and it only needed to be a pebble and you were a goner, you know. So yeah, keep the questions coming, but that's what that one is. This is what I want investigated properly. There's something very, very important archaeologically here. We've done the above water bit. It's just that we being a archaeological course that I was a tutor of in the 1990s. The Talsan quarry is a bit difficult to explain to people because most of the remains have been flattened by the scavengers in the 20s and 30s. This place really closed properly in 1925, and it's had sort of scavenger workings, if you can call them that for the want of a better word, from there up to the 1940s. But it's a place that's had a massive set of changes to it over the years. It's been very, very difficult to find the history of it. It's very convoluted. In fact, the king's jewellers ran it for a while. And I don't know if anybody got any internet connection. Rundle and Bridges. Don't know if they're still going. I'm just wondering if they're still going, whether they've got any documentation from the time they were here. Because these are people keep paperwork. Unless our friend Reich Marshal Goring helped them to clear it out, of course, which is what happened to the offices of Thomas Jones and Tapp, mining engineers, consultants to most of the slate quarries of North Wales by the 1930s, where they had a direct hit from an incendiary, which didn't help the archive much, unfortunately. One of the interesting things where diving and surface archaeology have an interface, to use our modern parlance, I might as well show off. I know the lingo too.
You don't know what WE means?
No. It's a lot of bollocks anyway, but you know, I don't edit it out. One of the things that when we ran, Michael Lewis and I ran an archaeology course here in August, the year the eclipse was, because we were looking at it from over there. And one of the things that's always interested me is this, where you've got massive masonry. It's just a cellar. It's massive masonry. And there's an L-shaped bit that sticks out into the water. And asking people who worked here in the 1920s, in fact, I knew one guy who worked here in the late 1890s. He was he was in his 90s, the guy when I met him. There was a complicated pumping system based on a pump shaft, where the engine or propulsion for the pumps got moved about. Now, the last place the pumps were, and there is a photograph, and it's in that if we ever get to see it, it's directly in the trees over there. Before then, that engine had probably been in that depression behind there. Probably. Because certainly before then, it had been here, because you can see 3 of the holding down bolts, and the labourer, the handyman told me this, because he was here at the time that these changes were being made. The reason they shifted from there to there temporarily was because that was cracking. The whole side of the quarry was going down. They didn't want to lose their pumping engine. They couldn't go that way because the road was going that way. They had to wait for the road to be diverted before they could put the engine out of the way. Great, no problem. And then I find a photograph in the archives taken from the top of those tips there, against the sun, unfortunately, which is bloody annoying, in about 1895-96. Looking down at here, and what can you see sat here-ish is a hell of a tall building, like the Dorothea pump house. It's really intrigued me, but there were 2 lines going into the side of it, and he had a tree growing through the top of it. So he obviously wasn't in use. And I figured out there was a pump rods from another pumping engine which had been there previously before here. And it became obvious that the pump shaft was actually inside the building. Not like in Dorothea when it's outside. It wasn't a Cornish engine. It was something, must have been, I've had an expert from Dublin over to have a look at this place. And he says it was something called a bull engine. And there's only one in the country and it's working. And it's in Kew Bridge Waterworks Museum in London. And the bull patent was, instead of having a rocking beam mechanism to transfer power from a cylinder pulling from above your head, they put the steam cylinder exactly above what it was supposed to be doing. They hung it in mid-air over the shaft and connected it to the operating rod. The only problem with that is a bucket to maintain, and that's what we reckon was here. But I reckon that this is the back end of the building. At the front end, where the shaft is, which I think has been confirmed by somebody who was diving, is outside there, is fallen off. There is a pump shaft over that drop, which I think is not far below the water line. Whether or not it's been tipped into, and filled in by scavenger workings, I don't know. But I know from what all people told me that the ladderway down the hall was here too. There's just a geological cross-section made just before the quarry shut, which is published in a geological journal, which shows a cross-section of there with 3 tunnels at various depths. But what is interesting, what goes with it, just above the waterline, because I only know above the waterline, there is a blocked off tunnel, which we've tried to get into from two sides, which was a connector to the drainage system. Now this is mega fun if you're suicidal. I mean, I suppose diving is much safer to a degree than some of the things that we've done, because there is a tunnel system which starts, it's not that one, there's one there at just above water level. It goes into a buried quarry. There's a big buried quarry beneath those tips there. You can't get to any far over there, but you can get to, it starts again behind that rockfall. Now it's interesting when you stand behind that rockfall in an 8-foot square tunnel which has had rope haulage in it, like a colliery. Because when you lean against the outside wall, you're never quite sure how many inches of thickness there are, or whether there's metres of thickness. Because as that has progressively adds backwards, obviously it's got thinner and thinner. But the system, the tunnel comes round the edge. There's an offshoot going to the big quarry that's up over the top of the second flight of tips there, which is a drainage. And it comes out, and there's an old, I don't know, is the old Morris 1000 chassis still there? Well, just there, you can see where this tunnel breaks out into the surface. There is a wonderful diversion for the water, which consists of a Wild West gold mine style tunnel with pit props going through sand and gravel. And they've all fallen down. Right. So you do all sorts of nice contortions when you go through there to make sure you don't touch any of them. Yes, and there is a bloody marvellous, massive shaft in the corner there somewhere. You look up at it, two sides are in rock, the other two sides are built up, and you can see the sleepers high above you, which is the capping. And above that, there is grass somewhere. And I don't really know where. So if you jump up and down in the far corner, in the right place, you might find this shaft. Right, there's a hell of a lot to be found in. I've tried to get Time Team to come here because I know Sian Price, the director of the specials, because she was the unit's location manager at the quarry that they used for Snowdonia farmhouse. And that was bloody good, that was, because being the mineral agents for the company that owned it, I got paid off them. And because I was the historical consultants for the production company, I got paid for them as well for doing the same job. It was marvellous fun. But, you know, it's strange how they do these programmes. It started off with wanting to be absolutely accurate. And we had this big meeting in the Slate Museum with Dr. Roberts and Sian, or the other girl, Vicky, I think her name was, asked, and were there accidents? And Dr. Roberts said, yes, there were fatalities as well. And I turned around to him and said, well, you know, you want to be accurate, we can actually stage a proper fatality for you if you want. And they couldn't take it in quite. Their faces sort of dropped before they worked out I was winding them up. But in the end, they faked like mad. And it's just, I tell you, it's bloody fun though. Because I wasn't allowed on set, but I was sort of directing things by email every night. I was having what had happened that day. And the suggestions for tomorrow to see if it was, you know, it was possible. And say, no, that's out of character. How about, we haven't annoyed so-and-so yet. Let's wind him up. And I got my friend Alan as the quarry manager, and I got him to work out what to do as well. So we gave them a really hard time, like they do on Brick Brothers sometimes. And you know what? I enjoyed doing it as well. Well, that's terrible, isn't it? So there is something of, oh yeah, and there's a buried water wheel as well from the 1840s. There's a cross section. Cast iron spokes, because the company that ran it here in the 1840s were colliery engineers from Staffordshire. And that tunnel goes out that direction towards the river, and it's going in slate slab and old rail construction. And it gets worse and worse and tattier the way you go that way. And in the end, because one knows it's a dead end, and one knows it's getting more and more dangerous, it's the question of how far does your nerve allow you to go. I sort of went 3/4 of the way. I was like, look at this, I don't like it. You know, when the rails are bowing and the side walls are blowing out and you know what's above, you know. But it's a really interesting place, that. Yeah.
How far does that tunnel go over there then?
We never got to it because as they tried to abseil down to it, there were bits falling off the top. But it can't go very far because just behind the trees is Cloveronen, which is a deep slate quarry, which has been infilled in the 1880s because it finished. So it can only go as far as that. And because it's infilled, it's just a higher gallery. I think it's more or less the same level as this, you see, in terms of horizons. If you sort of try and check horizon, it sort of makes sense. But, you know, to me, you know, archaeology, you look at that cut face there, you see the shape of the deposits. You can tell what's in it. And look, there's nice stones in the bottom off the, you know, the original ground level. And you've got split slate waste. You can tell which way it's been tipped. And there you can, you know, it's like an encyclopedia, that is, if you know what you're looking at there. Right, let's go on and have a look around here somewhere. Tell me if you're bored, won't you? But not all at once. So the pumping engine house is in there somewhere. Wrong time of year for this. There's a big iron plate down there. It's just like a bit of Tolkien, really. There's a big iron plate down there covering steps that go down into the deep tunnel system. But I'm book if I can remember where it is. Because we had to, I found it in 98, 99. Then we had to bury it again to stop any kids going down. So somewhere down there is this big sheet of steel. And the steps have been infilled with ash from the fire, the house there. But if you've got a rope, easy go down there. But be very, very careful. And, you know, and if you do, cover it over and hide it afterwards there. I don't want kids going down there. It's potentially fatal. And it wouldn't do very good for the World Heritage bid, would it? Scavenger workings, yeah? Chunks taken out of tips, little huts, various places. It probably isn't the easiest way down, is it? Well, not with the trees anyway. But halfway down here, you cut across that drainage tunnel, or the original branch of it, because there's an infill quarry pit here. And that tunnel's going through it and it's fallen in. So underneath us now, going that way and that back in the V, is this diversion done in sand and gravel with the amazing timber work. But you know, you find stuff all over the place here. For instance, here you go, holding down bolts, bricks, another holding down bolt. Now all that's got significance. The problem is, how do you work out what it is? The answer is with great difficulty. But sometimes you're lucky and you might find something on a map, or better still with me, this is where I've been lucky. I started early enough, asked the right questions to the right people, I hope, and got an answer. Oh yes, this old guy said, well, I started in Talzan in 1894. They were taking the overburden off the side of the hut, and they had winding inclines going up. There's one of them you can see on the left hand side of the incline here, some sleeper patterns, and the other one was down on the bottom. So what that is it's the first stage winding engine from down there, and then the second stage to take it up as part of the ever ongoing process of whitening. These places never stopped. You know, it's difficult. They've never been preserved like they are now. They're always changing. And one of the troubles that I have is trying to describe places to people is, what era do I talk about? You know, when I describe it from, say, the 3rd edition, 1913 Ordnance Survey map, well, it can be very, very different from what they were 20 years earlier. They're absolutely, totally alien. People working here 50 years before that wouldn't recognise where they were if they came back. They changed that much. And another thing that's a problem is boundaries. People ask me, oh, which quarry are we now? And I say, well, it depends what year you're talking about. Because not only were these leaseholds within landowning sets changed all the time, but sometimes the boundaries between the landed estates changed as well. Because Talzan here had been Dorothea had been part of a farm called Talzan. and had been sold off 40, 50 years before any quarrying happened to somebody else. And thus it stayed completely separate until 1962, when it came back into the ownership of Dorothea again, because it was a derelict place that the bank wanted to get rid of after somebody had died. But the mansion, the place, had become part of Dorothea 20 years earlier, because that had been sold by the liquidator of another company. So it's a hell of a mess, you know, trying to explain the changes that happened. You don't get it so much in other quarrying areas. I'm glad actually I've ended up by default studying this one, because this is by far the most difficult of them all. Possibly the most rewarding because of it. I don't say I understand it all, there's a hell of I don't understand, but yeah, oh God, I'll never write them. But you know, after 50 years, I'm getting there slowly. Let's have a quick look at this building before we leave. It's up to you whether you want to walk into it or not, because that might fall any second. I mean, it's been like this since 1957, but you know, you take your risk. This is an important building that the blooming Community Council was asked to condemn as a dangerous structure. There's no public access to here. No, we're not supposed to be here. This is one of the earliest mechanised slab factories in this area. We'll be slow in getting big slab factories. This was built somewhere around 1867, I think, because slate slabs for making cisterns for chemical works, breweries, flat slabs for dairies, urinals, not snooker, what the hell is the previous game to that? Billiards tables, gravestones, chimney pieces, you know, fireplace surrounds with decorative ceramic, pretend marbling or pretend wood put on them. You'll see Indigo Jones, the remains of that, give them a plug, fair play to them. Became not as important as roofing slate, but a significant part in itself, and this is a very rare survivor from that. It's an interesting building. There's a back end to it which was converted into something else in the 1900s, into a smithy, whatever. It's a nice little chimney, but this still had a roof on this until 1957, though I don't remember it with a roof. I got a couple of photos. But what's brilliant about it is, because somebody's going to ask later on, what's that tunnel over there on the far side of the mansion? What it is the original course of the 1828 railway to Carnarvon. That railway has been moved God knows how many times to take into account the expansion of the quarries and the expansion of the tips. So that one that we saw where we parked the cars and sort of said there was a railway going that direction, 3 6 inch gauge, originally came straight across where this quarry hall is, because the quarry was on the north side, and straight through the back there. There's nothing to be seen, it's just trees. Straight to the back there, where there is now a massive big slate tip, and it eventually came out in a cut and cover tunnel, and the quarry owner decided that expansion of his slate tip was, you know, more important than having the railway going back round the back of the house. So the railway was diverted, even though it rattled when it went past the house, and this was tipped over. So now the west end of that tunnel is there, but you can't see it, and the east end is still open because it was used as a siding for an incline, for the trucks to run into, and also for water to come out of. And this is an incline that goes up one level, then there's another one and another one, which is part of another railway system going all the way to Caesarea Vron village. And if anybody's read Gwynfor, the famous slate railway book, there'll be mention of the Bron and Towson Railway. And this is where it started off from, and that's from 1868 as well. Right. But it's strange, it's nice having met people. You know, this old guy in the 1890s said, I was asking about these old buildings. Oh, the one by the door was where they had the pay office for the top quarry where he used to work. Just separate from the pay office from this one. And you know, you wouldn't know these things except the one's been fortunate to meet somebody, isn't it? So, yeah, it's made what I'm doing that much bloody easier, isn't it? I mean, I could have stayed interested in castles, and people after me.
What kind of castles? Normal castles, any kind of castles?
Anything up to Tudor times. I weren't interested in Henry VIII's Sagport bloody cannon castles. Okay, now this was a stockyard because one of the important things about any industrial thing is your warehouse. Now you don't have a warehouse for raw material because you've already got it, it's in the ground. But when you produce your material, you've got to put it somewhere before it's sold. And it's a multi-stage process. In itself, you could do flow charts. And how the hell quarries worked, I know they were sort of self-regulating. You know, people knew their job, and the supervisors only had to sort of keep an eye on it. Because stuff coming out of the mills was stocked according to the individual production groups. So every 4 weeks there was a nominal new contract for the production group in the old days of anything from 4 to 6 blocks, usually related. They'd stack the made material in one place, and at the end of the month, the slate inspector, well, my grandfather ended up, one would come round, go through them, pick out any rejects, do a list of how much they'd made. That would go to the office, and a week later the clerks would have worked out off a very complicated pay system how much the group was paid. But then that stock was then sort of impounded and then taken to a different part of the stockyard where it was split into sizes then. That was the company stockyard. And it's from there that the individual trucks were loaded on the 346 to go to the station in Towson, depending on what order had come in from slate merchants to the main office. So it's how complicated was the system. I remember somebody asking in the Welsh Highland Railway Journal, how did that system work? And I thought of writing about it, and I thought, Christ almighty, it would take me a whole journal to sort of explain it, because there are feedback loops, and it's us all independent. You know, nobody was sort of stood, apart from the slate inspector saying, I'm having that one, that's got a corner missing. My grandfather was always given a second chance to chop it down into a smaller size, because they try and hide them upside down, you know. But the old bloke knew the top and the bottom, and I seen him go with fingers, 250 in, like that. Because it's in threes they were measuring them, counting them. And he'd always give them back, I'm told, my dad was telling me this. But if they tried to do him twice, he'd smash it in front of them, he'd throw the bits at them. God, he was a hell of a stern bloke. But he had to be, he was the interface between management and the workforce, And, in terms of about counting, so production slates were counted in threes, like herrings apparently. And it's something to do with how many slates a mule could carry in the 1760s. It is. I can't remember how it works, I'm hopeless with arithmetic, but something to do with 64. I don't know if 3 goes into 64, if it doesn't, but I can't remember it. But 1,000 slates are sold by the quarry in the old days. Today you get 1,000. You get 1,280, I think. So 1,200 is a quarry 1,000. And then there's 5% for breakages. But when a workman was being paid per 100, they were having to give 130 or something like that per 100 because of the same counting system. And of course, when the French were starting to export slates to here after World War I, especially after the roll-on, roll-off rail ferry, which really knackered us. because he didn't have to unload and reload on the other side. They were selling 1,000 as 1,000, so they appeared cheaper. Per slate, they weren't. But, you know, on the price sheets. And this plumbing industry wouldn't change. It was 1960s before they changed, you know. It was so conservative. Right, let's go and have a look and see. I'm taking too long for this, aren't I?